7:01. Would you like me to start?
Go right ahead.
Recording in progress.
Okay. We'll call to order the committee of the whole meeting for Tuesday, November 16th. First item on our agenda tonight is roll call.
Miller,
Here.
Rosato, Beck,
Here.
Connolly,
Here.
Chancet,
Here.
Sofa, Wolf,
Here.
Barron, here, Lehman,
Here.
Ayazi,
Here.
Malay,
Here.
Ewer,
Here.
Cerrone,
Here.
and Vogelsinger. We have 11 out of 14.
Okay. Alderman Vogelsinger did let me know that she'll probably be late to the meeting tonight. And let the record reflect that Alderman Sulfa has joined us. Now we have 12 of 14. Okay, up next is a reminder to please speak directly into your microphone and make sure for those that are online that you mute when you're not speaking. And then also that if you raise your hand to speak, that you put your hand down after you're done speaking. Nick. Next is item number 3, approval of the minutes for September 21st, 2021.
I'm sorry. Alderman Cerrone has his hand up.
Really? Thanks.
Just kidding.
I told you I would remind you. Okay, does anybody have any corrections or any comments on the minutes from September 21st? Not, can I get a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Ewer, second by Miller. Roll call, please.
Ewer,
Aye.
Cerrone,
Aye.
Vogelsinger, Miller,
Aye.
Rosato, Beck,
Aye.
Connolly,
Aye.
Chancet,
Aye.
Sofa,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron, aye, Lehman,
Aye.
Ayazi,
Aye.
and Malay.
Aye.
Motion carried 12-0.
All right, thank you. Next is items to be removed, added, or changed. Do we have anything tonight?
Not tonight.
Okay. And as presented, up next is item 5, matters from the public for items not on the agenda. Nobody
Don't have any.
Nobody online? I don't think we have anybody here. That's not on the agenda. And we are 1 minute away, so we have to wait till we get to 7:05 to start the public hearing.
I could have walked in like 30
I
seconds
know.
later, you know, and
Right.
But if we put anything else before this, then we have to wait forever to get to it.
yeah.
We all watch the clock.
15 seconds.
We need the Jeopardy music.
Yes.
Don't anybody play it.
7:05.
Okay, we have 7:05. Now open the public hearing for the 2022 budget. Can you come up here?
Good evening. This is the official notice to our residents and taxpayers of our budget that we intend to pass. It's a requirement that we do this. Where is that?
And you'll go to the Zoom webinar at the bottom. Yep. And then the green share screen.
Okay.
And then the Microsoft Edge. Yep.
I haven't received any comments from the public or from any further council members. I don't know if there were any further questions that anyone had.
I have not received any questions or anything, but I have had a couple of comments about how easy it is to navigate on the website with this new format.
I have heard that too, so that's
from
very
from
good.
several constituents that talked to me about that. They were very happy with, that it was easier this year than last year for them, so.
Right,
And I like it's a lot easier for me too to find everything.
yeah. It's difficult scrolling through.
Well, I gave up on the
PDF.
paper, on the paper copies a couple of years ago, and this makes it a lot easier to go
Right.
through and find.
I just need a Control F to find whatever it was I read 2 days ago, because that function's not there anymore, and I need to take better notes on where I,
Most of the time when I'm reading it, I leave everything open on here, so then I just scroll back through what's still open. It works out pretty good for me.
Yes, you can search within the page you're on.
yes,
But
yeah.
you can't search
I can't
the
remember.
If you're
entire
not sure
document.
which section it was.
Right.
Yeah.
You do have a hand.
Who has their hand up? Nick?
Yes.
Go ahead.
You know what? I was going to bring this up later in some of the topics, but I figured it's more of a budgetary question. We're going to discuss Phase 2A, the wastewater treatment plan improvements, later today, but it mentions that it's some of it's included in the upcoming budget. Some of the projects not starting until 23, but we're also passing a rate increase for it. So I wasn't sure, if there's a percentages of this, or if we're just trying to put money aside in both aspects. But is this being paid for via the rate increase, or is it included in the budget, or is it in the 23 budget?
It's being paid for initially via IEPA loans, and then we are recommending rate increases incrementally for 2022 through 2028, most likely, depending on how the rest of the phases go, to pay for the entire project. It's ending up costing quite a bit more than what was originally projected. So we need to have further rate increases.
So the budget's just taking care of a percentage of it, or?
Oh, the expense that's in the 2022 budget is to begin design of Phase 2A.
Oh, okay. So you have it designated out. This budget will pay for design, and the increase will cover the actual
Overall.
improvements.
Right, we're starting to pass incremental rate increases to cover the debt payment. And it's just the beginning of design, it's not the full budget for 2022.
So
So
then,
yes, the funds will be set aside so that we don't have a 16% increase the following year.
okay. And then on so when you say incrementally, when in the proposed budget, there's an 8% increase.
Right,
That's just for this year?
yes.
What's the total increase over through 28 that you foresee?
8% each year.
Wow.
It's significant.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want to say something, Gary?
No, she's got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? And we don't have anybody online?
We do not.
I don't know if there was anyone in the audience.
Everybody's here.
To speak?
I guess I'll make my normal speech that just drives me nuts, that we go through this and we have a budget, anywhere from 50 to $100 million every year of what we do, and nobody shows up for these meetings. And virtually none of us, other than casual contact, I'll say, get any real, comments that I know of every year, but it always seems 2 months later or a month later we'll get comments, or 6 months later we'll get comments about something that we have in our budget, or something that we've done, or a rate that we've increased, or whatever they don't like about our budget, and it drives me absolutely crazy that they can't show up for these meetings. I know they're publicized. I know we, put the notice in the paper, everything we have to do legally, so it's out there. And I know it gets talked about and it's on the city website, and yet nobody shows up for this. And that just absolutely drives me nuts that happens every year. And it has for the entire time I've been on the council. Maybe one or two people for a few years in a row, and that's about it. So I know we try to broadcast and we try to talk about it, but it really is, to me, disheartening that happens every year, year after year. I just have to get that out.
Sure. I did get a few questions from citizens that were handled through email, if that helps.
Makes it a little easier to handle. Okay, Mark, go ahead.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to add, kind of like to Nick, and we know that those rate increases are significant, especially if it's spread out. Continuing 8% year over year is frightens me. I'm glad to see no tax increase. Of course, anybody can just look at it and say, well, an increase is an increase no matter where it's at. So it's a little disheartening to hear that it's going to take so much over so many years, and I know we need to have that conversation to understand why such a dramatic increase in cost, because that's not trivial. And my complaint was, hey, we tend to overestimate all these projects, and this is one that's coming in. I mean, I don't know if we've ever seen anything underestimated by such a dramatic.
No, never. This is the first time for sure.
And so, yeah, obviously we don't want to see this, but this is dramatic. This is different than, hey, I underestimated by $100K or something like that. That, in the grand scheme of a $100 million budget, that's not a big deal. But the $25 million, is that the underestimate? Is that what I calculated it to be?
But now might be a good time for me to jump in. And I did reply back to City Council, and for the benefit of the public, I'll kind of go through what I wrote back to City Council. If we all could magically transport ourselves back to 2015, when we first began talking about the 3 phases, we'd all still be talking about a $65 million project. The general scope hasn't changed. What did change was projects have been let for bid and under construction in 20 and 21. Our consultant has seen those projects come in with 40% increases due to labor, due to materials, due to other shortages. We're just seeing that in the industry right now. Does that mean ours is going to come in 40% higher? We all have our fingers crossed that the answer to that is no. But if our consultant is trying to prepare a plan for us, they're not going to put blinders on and still say 65 million. They have to plan for what they're seeing in the market today. 2 years from now or 3 years from now or phase 3, will prices come back down? We'd all like to believe that. But they didn't miss the mark. A global pandemic occurred that nobody knew about, and then now we're kind of in the aftermath of that. That's kind of where we're at today.
Can we or do we take a chance of delaying in hopes that these prices remain? The first thing is, can we?
Yeah, and timing-wise, when we all again began planning for this, we were already supposed to be going into phase 3 by now.
Right.
And so those things that were end of life and were going to be corrected in phase 3, they're there now. And so, unfortunately, I will tell you that our UV disinfection system is no longer supported by the manufacturer. We've actually gone out and purchased spare parts just to have parts on hand for that thing, because we can't get anything more from the manufacturer. Our headworks, we're going to have to probably spend 6 figures to replace equipment within our headworks to get it to go a few more years, because when it actually needs to be reconstructed, then it's well into 7 figures. So to spend 6 figures is money well spent just to get us a few more years. So unfortunately, the answer is these things are at end of life and they cannot just wait anymore.
Okay. Thank you.
Does anybody online have any questions or in the public hearing? Okay, if there are no other questions, then I would ask for a motion to close the public hearing on the 2022 budget.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by you or second by Sofa to close the public hearing. Roll call, please.
Ewert,
Aye.
Saron,
Aye.
Vogelsinger, Miller,
Aye.
Rosato, Beck,
Aye.
Connolly,
Aye.
Chanson.
Aye.
Solfa,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron. Aye. Lehman,
Aye.
Nagyasi,
Aye.
and Malay.
Aye.
Motion carried 12-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then if there are no further questions that come up on the budget, this will be on the December 6th City Council meeting for approval.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Peggy.
All right, up next is item number 7, presentation on a proposed mixed-use development on Chamoy Avenue. Batavia Enterprises. Austin, the mic is yours.
Well, following a budget discussion like that, I hope we don't disappoint with our presentation here tonight. And Gary, if there was a chance to go back to 2015, there's a few things I'd do differently too. That'd be great. So, can I just click on the-
Yeah, you should be able to do the share screen. Oh, that's okay.
and Share screen?
Yep. Acrobat. There you go.
There we go. All right, perfect, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here tonight. We're delighted to be in front of you talking about something that is actually in quite close proximity to the last project you were just talking about. So we're here tonight to talk about 365 Chamoy, a development that we'd like to bring forward and put in front of this group for a conceptual review and discussion. But the first thing I want to mention here is the site that we're talking about on the Chamoy, on Chamoy Street, Chamoy Avenue?
Avenue.
I should know that, but Chamoy Avenue. The site that we're talking about is the site of the former Chamoy and Sons Foundry, which started in 1872 in response to the need for iron and ironwork products after the Great Chicago Fire. This site operated for well over 100 years and closed in 2002, was officially demolished in 2007, and for the last nearly 2 decades has sat waiting for a moment like this. I find it incredible that in the year of the 150th anniversary of the Great Chicago Fire, the very event that gave rise to the Chamoy and Sons Foundry creation, we now stand on the precipice of giving this same piece of property another 100 years vision and purpose. And that purpose is to bring residents and commercial activity to downtown Batavia to support the downtown improvement initiatives that this great group in our city have been underway for years. Now, I know that none of you are a stranger to the pitfalls of the real estate development world, and that you have had some unique experiences yourselves with other development projects all around the city. However, I can tell you that the team that we've assembled that's going to talk to you tonight and the team that we've assembled on this project have such project expertise and experience, such development knowledge and operational capacity that I would truly refer to this group as a dream team in the real estate development world. So let me just introduce a couple of players that are with us. Every person that is going to be introduced tonight, behind them is a significant team of other professionals. And for most, this is what they do and how they do it. So first and foremost, As Chairman Wolf mentioned, I'm Austin Dempsey with Batavia Enterprises. For over 6 decades, our company has been taking great pride in the fact that we're part of the interwoven into the fabric of the greater Fox Valley area. Calling Batavia home since 1959, we are delighted to pretty much be known in the community for a place where many residents and businesses call their home. But we've also are no stranger to the development world. We have been involved in pieces and parts in development for over 6 decades in the greater Fox Valley area, from hospitals and medical office buildings to industrial buildings, thousands of residential homes, to a significant amount of retail development along the Randall Road corridor, and most recently, a retail project that this fine group approved over on the continuation of the Avenue Marketplace project to bring a Starbucks and a Chipotle right next to Raising Cane's out there on the former Avenue Chevrolet property. I'm joined tonight by Mr. Mike Algram. Mike joins us with over 2 decades of experience in the commercial banking world, where he has been on now both sides of this transaction from a banker standpoint and from a real estate development standpoint. Mike joined our team about 1.5 years ago, and we're delighted to have him on board as well. We've got 2 other groups that are going to be introduced as our partners or development partners on this project. And I'd like to bring up Nate Richard from Rumi to introduce himself and his team.
Thank you, Austin. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We are delighted to be here. Like Austin mentioned, my name is Nate Reichard, and I'm joined here by my 2 partners, key principals in Rumi, stands for Real Estate for You and Me. Carl Schertzinger here in the front row, and Dr. Rose Tang behind me here. So we are very excited to present what we've been working on for a better part of 1.5 years or so. And I just want to give you a little overview on who Rumi is. We are an institutional real estate property manager, fund manager, private equity, asset manager, construction management, fully vertically integrated, and have a lot of experience with a national footprint. And we are based and headquartered here locally, as the crow flies about 7 miles away. In DuPage County Airport is where we headquarter. Carl's local to the Tri-City area as well, and we are based here in Chicagoland. So we are very excited to work in tandem, as you see the 3 logos on screen here with CRG Residential. We've completed about $500 million or so of acquisitions, redevelopment projects with our team, and we've known Austin for quite some time now too, and working obviously in tandem with this project. I couldn't be more thrilled to present what we've been working on with you, and we're excited to see what we can do collaboratively together, and obviously need your help, and which will come later as we present what we've displayed here in this project. But we truly believe we are a dream team together, working, and we're excited to present what we have today. Thank you.
Joining us from Indianapolis is our CRG partner, a representative from CRG. John, you should be able to talk as a presenter.
Yeah, good. Awesome. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, fellow council, thank you for your time tonight. As Nate and Austin have said, we're very excited about this project, presenting it tonight, getting your feedback, and moving this forward. To give you a little feedback and oversight on CRG, we were a company founded in 1995 by one person who wanted to focus on multifamily exterior construction. Started a shop in Carmel, Indiana, which is where our headquarters is today. Since that time, we've been able to expand our company into different divisions that include multifamily remodel, rapid rehab program for occupied units of existing multifamily, and then ground construction and a focus in development and investment. Right now, our rehab and rapid rehab model covers a little over 20 states, mainly east of the Mississippi River. And our development and investment and new construction ground up team focuses in about 7 states currently today, spanning from Ohio all the way west to Iowa, up to Michigan, and then down to Kentucky. So our focus on the investment is solely in the Midwest, and will continue to be mainly in the Midwest. Starting with 1 employee, we fast forward to today, we've got over 200 full-time employees, and our core focus has been since its inception, multifamily and mixed-use multifamily construction and development. We don't do any property management, asset management. We're capitalized internally. And so our focus is to continue to focus on what we do best, and that's multifamily construction and development. Looking over the last 18 months, I heard a couple concerns from the previous agenda item on cost increases and where things are at globally. For CRG, we've been lucky, but we've been able to navigate over that, since March 2020 to get those projects in our pipeline over the finish line. In total, we did close 6 multifamily projects up to date, and 4 of those were public-private partnerships during that time. That accounted for about 1,000 units with a little over 35,000 square feet of commercial space across those 4 projects. So, dealing with the current environment, the existing environment, and the environment going forward, we've been able to successfully navigate that. We are, financially capable, but in my opinion, probably what's equally as important is we do have the manpower and the experience and the sophistication in these complicated, complex projects to still do 6 projects at a time, manage them well, get them across the finish line, get them leased up, get them stabilized, and for everyone to have a place where you're out of your cities, communities, investors alone, just looking at the end product and being able to acknowledge what it took to get those projects done. We've been able to do that over the last 18 months, and going forward, we will continue to grow that. As Nate and Austin have already said, for our team, this is a unique project because it's an opportunity to work with complementary partners who are in that region, who know the real estate like BEI, and bring seamless complementary efforts to the table with us. So with that, Austin, I'll hand it back over to you.
All right, John, thank you. And John wanted me to share that he apologizes he couldn't be with us in person tonight, but he was at a multifamily event down in Indianapolis, so wasn't able to join us. The slide that you have in front of you now is obviously a very familiar map that all of us have seen with some different colors to it. No, it's not a political map. What I think it represents is the fact that while BEI is a Batavia-based Illinois company, we have a team of folks here that have been doing development across a multitude of different states. This group alone that we've brought in is currently working on projects or developed projects in 10 states and is continuing to pursue deals across the country. What makes this so unique from a guy in the real estate business here is you have a landowner who has a vested interest in seeing his community, I live here, raise my family here, get the best project possible with one of the nation's top residential builders in CRG Residential, and the end user, then the user, the developer, and the person who's going to be the operator in Rumi. That is a combination that doesn't happen frequently when you have all those together. A lot of times projects get built and then turned around and flipped and sold. The difference here is rather than building it, to make the highest amount of money possible. You're looking with a group of people who are building it for a long run and want to put something very quality in the area. So let's talk about the project. So we're here tonight just to do a conceptual overview of some of the scope and scale and magnitude of what we're thinking. There are a lot of decisions that haven't been made that still need to be made, but in working with the Batavia city staff and Laura and her team, it was determined that it probably makes sense for us to put this out here and start to get some feedback from this group on what direction we want to go. And we'll talk about that in a little bit, but let me first talk about just kind of the magnitude of the project. So we're talking about 167 residential units that is made up of the existing Chamoy pad there that is on Chamoy Avenue that's currently growing great grass. We'd like to grow residential units and families here in Batavia. Our project style is going to be heavy on amenities. There's almost an 11,000 square foot amenities deck on the outside of the property, plus 7,000 plus square feet of amenities in the inside of the property. So our mantra is you're going to be able to have resort-style living in downtown Batavia. We are going to engage the river. The hope is to really speak to access and views to the river. We'll talk about that soon. And then there's 205 covered parking stalls, and what we hope to be will be a public parking structure. So the next couple of slides are just going to give an overview. Obviously, you've got the river. First Street, here's Chamoy Avenue. The yellow is the area and scope and scale of what we're talking about. Our plan is to leave the existing historic limestone structure in place that is currently known as the River West Family Fitness, but to basically work on the vacant pad that is empty right now, which is the former Batavia Bowling Alley, and then the Chamoy and Sons Foundry we spoke about earlier. So the next couple of slides, we'll just give some general scope. A project like this, and any project that generates residents, is going to need a level of parking. And so what you have on the screen now is just the general footprint of a small parking structure here along First Street, and a larger parking structure that sits on basically the base of the site. It's a podium build construction, which is real estate terminology for parking structure with residential units or commercial units built above it. And it would encompass most of the grassy area there. This is the conceptual parking layout. What I think is important is, in talking about parking, there are 205 covered parking stalls, but then there's approximately almost 400 total stalls that will be adjusted, added, subtracted, multiplied, and divided. We're going to retool some of the parking that's along there to maximize the parking efficiency there. So there will be a number of spaces. 205 will be covered. The remaining balance will be surface parking, much of which is there now in some sort of capacity and just not accounted for. This slide, it's hard to read, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. Out of the 167 units, our unit matrix is approximately 140 in our two-building structure, which is this L-shaped building here and this L-shaped building there. And then approximately 27 units in another building along First Street. You know, being a resident of this community for the last 15 years, I've had an opportunity to participate in a few discussions and hear some resident feedback about size, scope, and scale of projects. And one of the things that the team was really committed to doing was delivering something that we think the citizens of Batavia will be super excited about. Obviously, the 167 additional residential units and the parking spaces. We're also adding 7,000 to 8,000 square feet of commercial space along First Street along in here. But we really wanted to design, and again, this is not final design, this is concept, but design something that was very complementary with our town. So we've designed 3 separate buildings all on one project. that the three buildings all complement each other, and it creates, in this particular case, it creates 14 different corner units per floor, just with this layout. If we end up with this layout, it will be great. If we end up with a different layout, the commitment to the project is to not have one monolithic building, but to have a project that incorporates a couple of different structures. Each building will have an opportunity to have their own kind of individual flair and feel, but they will all be connected through this development. And then what we're calling this large area out here is an amenities deck. This is almost an 11,000 square foot amenities deck with a pool that will be able to overlook the river. Something I don't think is seen anywhere in any multifamily development up and down the greater Fox Valley area or even moving east. So as we cycle to the next slide, just generally here, these are just some potential elevations. But I wanted to put these in to show the magnitude of the building setback in between. This is going to be where the cursor is here, is where the pool is going to be, and this entire amenities, the entire area between these two buildings in the L shape is going to be the amenities deck. We're really focused in on providing that resort-style living in downtown Batavia. So we see just a couple elevations. These buildings will end up having, our commitment is to bring these buildings forward with materials that will be authentic to, at least looking authentic to the area. And there's a lot of design that we're still planning on moving forward with. This is a conceptual discussion because, as with all projects like this, especially located in a TIF district, we need to talk about dollars and cents before we move forward. So conceptually, these are just a few of the river, elevations. This is the east elevation, so as it looks east, you can see, a little bit of iteration in the different buildings, plus the wide open area for the pool and the amenities deck. So one of the other things we really want to move forward with is really a compliment to the city council. You guys are great, but so were the folks back in 2011, of which I know at least I think Alan Wolf might be the only alderman who's on from that time, but there was a major...
And Alderman Chanzit.
And Alderman Chanzit. Well, he's not here, so sorry, Dan. Sorry, Dan.
He's online.
So Alderman Chanzit and Wolf, thank you guys, because the initiative that you launched forward in 2010 and 2011 to really look at beautification of the streets through the streetscape program was a true inspiration to us in the kind of sizing and scope of this project. We went and looked up the framework, the streetscape framework plan from 2011, and we're planning on incorporating all of those suggestions into our project, so we would extend the streetscape. It's really amazing what River Street has done for Batavia to create a sense of place on a community street. And so we want to try to do that here as well as part of our development. This, of course, comes with cost, but we really think that we're elongating downtown. We're drawing more people south. We're giving them a reason to come south. And we think the streetscape program, especially as it relates to engaging with the bike path, in the background you can see an archway. This was a concept that one of the people on the team had saw about, I think this was another bike path in some other community, but they really liked having some trailhead that's an engagement, and I could think that could be right as it enters Clark Island. We have such a natural, beautiful amenity with the river in this part of the town, and Clark Islands and the skate park and the ball field over there. It would be great for this project to help complement that and really feel like it's all at one cohesive elongation of downtown. And the streetscape program that the city came up with in 2011 really puts the framework together for that. So we're excited to try to incorporate that into our plan as well. So why 365 Chamoy? There's really four main points or pillars of which we're focused in this project. And the first one is the live, work, play concept. If COVID, there's probably not a person alive who hasn't learned something different about either themselves, their coworkers, or other people around them through COVID. COVID's really taught us from a real estate and a property management standpoint that today residential living needs to be more than just residential living. I'm pretty jazzed with this project and the team that we've developed, because I look at the dozens of other projects that they have done, and John mentioned 6 projects they've brought to light or brought to finish since COVID has begun to begin with. 6 projects just like this in a pandemic this team is developed. And so that live, work, play concept is important. Being a heavy amenities facility, we are going to hopefully have, in addition to the pool and a bocce court and, a bar, we're going to have co-working, a little bit of co-working space, a little bit of fitness space. There's some cabanas there so people will be able to take their, conference call from the poolside, their balcony, their units, their co-working space. It really complements that live work. And then the play element, our goal is to deliver to Batavia this resort-style living, a place where people are going to want to come and spend time. People who rent here and who call this home are going to have people over, and people are going to want to hang out at the amenities deck. I really think that this is a way that we're going to be able to move forward and really get some impressive interest in this site. Our second main pillar is economical luxury. At the end of the day, this group behind me is committed to bringing forth a product that is a luxury product at a price point that Batavians can afford and a price point that we can afford and attract. We've done market studies. You guys have heard a lot about market studies in the area. The Rumi team is actually in the process of doing a project right now in St. Charles, and so they're very familiar with the area. And when it's all said and done, we want to make sure that this project which will have a number of age-in-place seniors, we're pretty confident of that the market studies seem to show that. We want to make sure that's affordable for the, young couple who's, one of them's a teacher at Batavia High School, and this is their first place after getting married, or the firefighter and their spouse who wants to put roots in the community of which they work. These are the type of things that, and type of tenants we think will be attracted here. We talked heavily about the increase in public parking and then the streetscape improvement, but both of those were in these pillars because we feel how important they are towards complementing this development and having this development fit within the interwoven fabric of the community. It is, without a doubt, inside of what I think the comprehensive master plan has called for projects in downtown, and we want to make sure it fits. So at this point, to give a little bit more of a sense of, the support level that we need and what we're talking about from a size, scope, and magnitude, but also from a market timing and cycle, I'd like to bring Nate back up to talk a little bit about market cycles and where we are in our particular one.
Thank you, Austin. Appreciate that. Yeah, so we as professional institutional real estate investors, we have an extra emphasis on analytics, right? So we're tracking when we evaluate various redevelopment opportunities and development opportunities, the key fundamentals of what's happening in the area, both macro and micro and geopolitical and everywhere in between. We want to know everything about what's happening in every submarket so we can make smart decisions on investments. And as Rostin mentioned, we are doing a 200-unit community in St. Charles and invested in that area and love what's happening there. But in addition to that, we are developing in the greater Chicagoland area 300 units plus ground floor retail, 12,000 to 15,000 square foot ground floor retail. We love where we're at in the real estate cycle. So there's economists, one of name that we subscribe to, Christopher Lee, and he is broadly mentioned and coined the market cycle timing of it, a cycle beginning on the 2s and ending on the 8s. And we just happen to be rounding the corner and beginning a 2. So we have a market sort of expansion opportunity, which is why we're so bullish about developing and acquiring and redeveloping multifamily real estate around the country. And we have a unique time in the cycle to really scale up. I think there's also pressures, or COVID obviously has brought us certain societal changes in that people like to have a city experience but also be in the suburbs. So there's been a flight to the suburbs that's been very real in migration to the Tri-City area specifically. And we feel like this development really is on a ground breaking, no pun intended, type of cornerstone for capturing those various social and post-COVID changes. Or I guess we're still in a pandemic, but we feel like we're in a very, very unique position in the cycle, and the timing really is now. And I think we feel that way very strongly. There's obviously cost pressures that could change, the way we view this project. And I think we need to realize, where we are at, and strike while the iron's hot in terms of where we are in the various parameters of costs and obviously social changes that are happening. And so we are very, very bullish. And we'd love to, this is really, at the end of the day, this is about about you, right? It's about what Batavia wants to become, putting a project that's in alignment with its vision that Austin had just mentioned, with the cityscape and the landscaping, and bringing something very unique with the origins of this particular site being at a foundry. We've talked about many different sort of creative elements in terms of the Lombardi Trophy obviously was founded and designed and made here on the site, including the Oscar Trophy as well. So I think there's some elements that we can pull out to what this foundry on this particular site has put together that's very unique. And we feel we have the creative and energies to do that, right? And bring something that the Batavia is very, very proud of. And so I guess the drum roll here, and everyone's kind of waiting for the catch here, is what's the ask, right? And so I'll go to the next slide here, if you can all see it. But the total ask is $11.283 million. The current TIF eligible cost right now is $8.4 million, leaving a differential of $2.8 million is what we're really solving for. So I think with that said, I'm going to pass it over to John LaSalle, our CRG partner that's on Zoom, and he really can kind of talk through the various our TIF eligible public improvement sort of parameters and items here in this list. John, are you?
Yep. Thanks, Nate.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's a lot of information taken here, and what I'll do is maybe start at the top, work down, and then we'll jump over to the top right to the chart. But as Nate said, there's a total TIF request of the $11.283 million. We've brought on board Baker Tilly as our financial consultant for this project. There's good history there working with Baker Tilly, both with Rumi and CRG, I know. And so this project is currently in a TIF district that is existing, that has burned off some of the years. So the full TIF increment is not realized with this project and how the underwriting works. And so today that dollar amount is the $8.457 million of what this project Baker Tilly believes can support for a TIF bond. If we ran this at a full TIF term cycle and got the full benefit, that would be the $11.283 million that this project can support. Now you take into consideration some additional closing costs and issuance costs, some that are paid at closing, some that are held back. That increases the bond issuance to 11.7, and we are also requesting certain fee waivers from the city as well. We move down below. We do have several TIF eligible improvements, including the parking deck, site acquisition, site work. All of the enhancement and streetscape work, the underground detention that would help service off-site detention as well. That totals $12.2 million. Then if we jump up to the chart, I think the critical thing to understand and realize here, at least in my own opinion, is today we're looking at a $21,000 roughly tax bill. That jumps the first year of full assessment. Our projection is just over $760,000, and so you're seeing an increment of over $700,000. In that first full assessed year. And but for this project, that increment doesn't exist moving forward. So I think a long-term outlook with this project for the city of Batavia, what it can do not only today but in 15 years, in 20 years, there's significant financial advantage if we're looking at this from the long term.
Thank you, John. So what we've done is we've kind of covered just the development site, the scope and magnitude of a potential project with potential concepts. We've taken it pretty far in the detailed depth of a deep dive, I should say, with the city staff to look at where we are in regards to using the existing TIF that's in place. This is in a TIF district that was originally created and extended a multitude of years ago. As you guys know, the best time to do a development is 1 second after the TIF is passed. The worst time to do a development is any time after that. So we are in a TIF district that unfortunately has a number of years that have clicked by. And so in conversations with Laura and her team, we've been able to, uncover that this is a project that I think the staff, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but feels like in general we're on the same page as far as a good quality project. I hope this group also agrees that we should support this project, or we think that there could be support for this project. It really boils down to right now is there's a multitude of different pathways that we could go, and we need to get some level of feedback, or we thought it was appropriate to get some level of feedback on this project so that we can collectively work as a team and with the staff on moving forward on which pathway we feel it makes the most sense. So, Laura, did I do an okay job of summarizing that?
Yes, you sure did.
So, I better zoom out here. So generally, zoom out one more time. Going the wrong way. So at this point in time, we'd like to entertain any questions. Again, CRG and John, who's joining us online, is part of a 200-plus person development team that builds this project. So any concepts in regards to economies of scale with their $500 million of other development projects that they're currently working on, or material costs, or anything like that, he'd be a great resource for that. The Rumi guys are the end unit operators, and one of the things I forgot to mention earlier is one of the things that they're committed to is really delivering wow environments for the residents. These are 4 projects that they just sent me pictures of projects that they actually have done and built. John, I don't know if you can tell us where some of these projects are, or Nate, or anybody, but these are projects that have actually been built.
Allison, I can touch on that. The upper left and the lower right, that is a project in Evansville, Indiana, on the Ohio River. It is a 44 unit mixed-use development that was probably what I would call a flagship development, and that will continue to be a flagship development in my career. It was a public-private partnership with the state of Indiana, the city of Evansville, Vectren Energy, the local energy company there, that put in a lot of smart devices, including smart refrigerators, smart tankless waters, smart thermostats, all as a testing hub for their pipeline product. So it was a very unique project, but to Austin's point, these are you know, our finishes, our design, it plays to what is the city, what is the background, what is the history. And so this is a modern industrial feel at the Post House project, in our opinion, which plays right into the concept of downtown Evansville and what it has been and what it is still becoming. In the upper right, that is in Westfield, Indiana, about 1.5 miles from my house. I'm a resident of Westfield. This is one of our projects that we were able to close, and we actually just completed with a ribbon cutting here this week, actually, on that. And then down in the lower left corner, that is in Brownsburg, Indiana. That was a 2-building mixed-use development, which you're looking at what we've pegged as a pocket park, which is a public and private amenity with that project. So that was that had a unique concept that offered something that a lot of other projects haven't offered that we've been part of.
Thanks, John. So I guess before we jump into the discussion, I do want to talk about, have a level of discussion, but something occurred to me as John was talking. Most of us in this room, maybe everybody in this room, knows Britta McKenna, a longtime Batavia resident, former Citizen of the Year. Sometime during COVID, she was doing a project, or maybe it was at the onset of COVID, about she was doing some visioning for the Kluber building, which, as we all know, there's a new brewery who's moving into that property, Sturdy Shelter, of which was a BEI procured client for the Klubers, which is awesome. We're delighted to see them move forward. But one of the things she did is she did a charrette, and I think a number of you in this room might have been on it. I think Leah, you and I might have been on the same call, and Laura, I don't remember who was on my call, but one of the questions that I found was particularly interesting was, what do you see as the vision for this southwest quadrant of town? And I kind of I might own a property or two in that quadrant, so I was very curious to hear what people had said. And one of the things that really struck me was there was no cohesive vision. There was no cohesive plan. It was dots of really cool things like Limestone and Riverside, and I think the Batavia Vet Clinic, and obviously Water Street Studios, but nothing that tied it together, nothing that gave it a purpose. Tonight, and hopefully with this project, we want to give that entire quadrant a purpose. We think that there's a vision of tying every piece and part of that quadrant together all the way out to hopefully 31 and Main Street at some point in time in the near future as well. I think this is an opportunity for us as a community to say, hey, we got a piece of town that has significant historical significance, but means something, and this could be that shot in the arm. So I know I spoke longer than I told Laura I was going to speak for, so I apologize here. Oops. So any questions for us and the team, and then I think we need to facilitate a discussion on moving forward. Mr. Mayor, sorry.
Yeah, Austin, I think I've shared this with you over the last year and a half since we've been having all the discussions about the Shodine project. I've got a number of what I will call incumbent Batavia residents who have told me they're watching this with great interest because they're very interested in potentially moving into one of these. Now that we're down here with you guys in a public meeting having this conversation, and admittedly we've been talking about this for a long time before we brought it into the public forum here. I think tomorrow, if it gets out in the paper or whatever it does, it'll probably be on the line. Not so much the paper, it'll be all over the social media with this. The question that I'm sure I'll get hit with, how many units are in this thing, Jeff? How many units are in it? You got an answer for that?
So right now, the concept we put forward, that we've done our 167 units.
That's right.
Microphone, please.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you. The concepts that we have put forward is comprised of 167 units made up of 1- and 2-bedroom apartments. And so there, for the age in place seniors, with the amenities that we think we're going to bring to Batavia, that resort-style living in Batavia, this could be a great option for the age in place seniors.
And each unit will have, what, one parking space inside, or two, or as many as you want to buy?
Well, what we're proposing here is it's a publicly owned parking structure that the city would be able to generate revenue off of on an annual basis. And so residents would be allowed to buy parking passes, through the city, very similar to what you have already agreed to and done with the One North Washington project. So yes, you could have 4 spaces if you want.
So one of the questions I've had in my office a couple times is, talking about the Chodine project, these all look like they're 2-bedroom. Is there any good, if suddenly my kid comes to live with me or something happens, is there a chance that we can get some 3-bedroom units in this thing, or can we remodel some of these so that they can have some flexibility built into them for the number of occupants?
Well, interesting in regards to that, I had a conversation with John and the CRG team not too long ago, and he gave me quite a long laundry list of potential amenities that we would put into the property. Residence lounges, entertainment rooms, co-working conference room, indoor cooking and grill demonstrations, pools, cabanas, pergolas, all those other things. But one of the things that he mentioned, which was interesting, was the potential of putting in a rentable guest suite or two, so that if you did have your grandkids come in, they could rent a suite in the building that would be furnished as almost like a hotel room.
I'm asking these questions not to be nitty-picky here, but this is the stuff that these folks that are, I think, seriously interested.
Your Honor, can you use the microphone so that everybody can hear it?
And
Thank you.
The last thing I'd like to ask, just to put it on the record, this building would be, from a security perspective, it's all going to be sprinklered, and it will all have security doors on it, so that one tells me that he wants to buy one of these because his vision is, come about the 1st of November, he's going to lock the door and go to Florida for 6 months. He'll be back for Christmas, and as soon as Christmas is over, he's back to Florida for 3 months, and he wants something he can just lock the door and not have to worry about anything. It looks to me like you've designed that in this unit, correct?
Well, Mr. Mayor, I feel confident in saying he'd have 167 choices to fulfill that,
Okay.
fulfill that need. Yep.
Austin, may I ask you to do a stop share so that we can see which of the aldermen have their hands up?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There we go.
There we go. Ooh, lots of hands.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Okay. George, you got a question?
Yep. Hi, Austin. How you doing?
Good, George.
Just a couple questions. I think some of them have already been answered. Any potential for there to be condos in these buildings, or will they only be rentals?
Nate, do you want to talk about condo versus rental market? There is a significant bifurcation in lending capacity in the condo market. So they're shaking their head no, but feel free to jump up if you want. Today, I'd love to do a condo building, frankly, and I'm not ruling that out for another project or two downtown. But as it relates to this project, in order to get financing, traditional financing, we would need to have approximately 60+% of the units pre-sold before the financing is available. So I think what that is it's an overreaction, and we do have a 20+ year banker behind me who can jump in if he needs to as well, but I think it's an overreaction by the banks because so many condo projects were built, and there were a lot of bank losses that went with the condo projects. We're not in a position where we think we can do this yet. I do believe there is a future for this product in Batavia. I do believe that when we see a project like ours and in One North Washington and other projects occur in our community, that there will be a strong demand for a condo style project, and we may be able to hit those thresholds. But at this point in time, George, they're all rentals.
Sounds good. And then two other questions. One, you may not be willing to answer. Just curious, how long have you been discussing, developing, concepting this project for? I mean, how many years back did this seed plant, I guess?
That's a great question. Like most downtown redevelopment projects, it's been decades in the making, as I say. I want to say that our acquisition of the Chamoy Foundry and then subsequently the Batavia Bowl Both properties were completely uninhabitable and in horrific condition in our demolition of those, plus then the site cost and all the environmental remediation work that we've done to get clean, buildable sites. I think we've been working at it for a while. This particular project is an evolution, if I'm being honest. We first began with this team looking at the former Chase Bank site at 31 and Main Street in Batavia, and we are committed to continuing to study that site. We were not able on that site to bring a cost versus quality project to the table that I was comfortable with, and so we pivoted directions down to this site. This site is along the river. It's currently ready to go, and it's a much buildable, faster buildable site. So it's been a while, frankly, that we've been talking about it. This site specifically for about a year and a half now.
Great. And then the last item. This is just out of left field, kind of. It would be super exciting to me to see some sort of integration of solar energy generation into the buildings, if for no other reason than to maybe act as a battery backup system for electric vehicles and or for power outages for the buildings. Because obviously I can't imagine it'd be easy to make a solar energy array that could be tapped by the individuals from an electric utility perspective. But if you had some Tesla power walls, just for example, just throwing out a random example, that the solar energy array was keeping charged so that the units would never have to deal with power outages legitimately, and also have electric outlets in the parking garage or facility for electric vehicles. I would just love to see something forward thinking like that being developed in something like this, especially since this is a luxury facility. Anything that takes the environment into consideration, I think would be a plus. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, George, I would agree entirely. We are the city of energy. It would be cool to have, the concept that the team has really embraced is I think everybody is surprised with how much unique and awesome history we have in Batavia. So we've talked about lobby arrangements and historical halls of fame and that type of stuff, but to really try to embrace our Batavia uniqueness would be interesting. From a solar energy efficiency standpoint, I can tell you, I was surprised in looking at the budget every year and how much our energy electric utility is as far as revenue, overall revenue for the city of Batavia. And I know that's an important component. But I agree with you. Any way we could find some level of environmental friendliness to this would be a good thing. So I've taken a note on that, and we'll talk about that in our design review. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Dan, you're next.
Thank you. So I can't imagine that you haven't thought about this question. I'm trying not to throw a softball at you, but what have you learned from the process of another large scale building on the other side of town, and how do you anticipate navigating the difficult waters that you have ahead of you?
Gee, great question. And for those online, you have an unfair disadvantage because I see your smiles where everyone else I just see their eyes squinting here. So
I'm smiling too.
I think Dan, to be honest with you, there have been a lot of very in-depth, heart-to-heart discussions about the process and what I think some potential headwinds and pitfalls could be. But what I'm very happy about is the commitment of the team that we have in on this. This is, I mean, legitimately, it's a team that does $500 million worth of this type of development work all over the place. If they ever encountered Batavia before, I don't know. We'll find out. But what I can tell you is we do, and we have watched an engaged citizen base have a very passionate discussion about their town and their downtown and what they like to see. And our design that we talked about earlier, I believe, has taken a significant amount of that feedback into play. We have 3 separate buildings. We could get a lot more units and get a better return by building one big monolithic structure, but that was very clear that that's not what this town is, that a lot of the people in this town are looking for. Yeah, we're asking for TIF funds. No question. It's in a TIF district. That's what these projects are for. You, as aldermen, understand that. The people, some of them understand it, some of them don't understand it. We're never going to be able to make everybody happy, but what we can commit to and look every citizen in the eyes on is that we're committed to building a project that is going to be a great addition to this town, and we're going to stand by it. We're not building it and flipping it. You have the end user sitting in this room today. We're building this to be part of this community for a long time. Our company's been here 6 decades. I would love to be involved in this building for another number of decades. That is something that I can confidently say that no matter what the feedback is and no matter what the criticism are or the accolades, we will stand by this project and we'll stand by this community. So we're ready for that discussion.
Thank you.
All right, Nick, you're next.
Sure. My question is more for Laura, but before that, based on Dan's question, which was a great question, I want it posed to the council too. What did we learn, and how are we going to navigate differently through this process? The presentation's great, awesome. It's exciting. This is exactly what TIF funds are for. A development like this, but there's a shortfall and we aren't in a position to roll the dice or come up with funds. So my question's more to Laura. Did you guys see extending the TIF or rewriting the TIF? How did you foresee coming up with that shortfall? Because I can't see squeezing it in the budget at this time.
Great question, Nick. And yes, unlike some other situations that we had approached with the other project, we actually have at least 3 different options for how we might be able to proceed with designing a package of incentives for this project. It is located in TIF number 3. TIF number 3 is set to expire in 2039. However, it has been in existence already for a number of years, such that it currently itself generates approximately $400,000 in increment per year. Part of that is obligated under the redevelopment agreement for Walgreens for a continuing incentive that is being paid on that project. But that is approximately, is it, Peggy, $60,000 per year, about $65,000 per year? For the part of the TIF 3 increment that is being paid on the Walgreens project. And so the remainder is there to be used for other projects within the TIF. And so what this developer has asked is, in addition to the increments being generated by the development that we're looking at today, that in addition to that, we supplement that with increment from the area-wide TIF, and in about $220,000 per year. That is one path. Another path is that we have TIF 1 is an adjacent TIF, and we have the opportunity to utilize increment from adjacent TIFs in order to supplement and provide incentives to projects in that adjacent TIF. However, we know that TIF 1 is expiring in 2024. TIF number 1 generates about $900,000 in increment per year. a third option, and this is being used successfully in other communities, and in fact, Aurora has created two, what are known as micro TIFs. And a micro TIF includes little more or exactly the redevelopment area itself, which provides the benefit, as Austin was describing, that the best time to have a project with a TIF is the moment that it is created. And so that would offer the opportunity to have all 23 years of the potential increment, but for, getting it to the fully occupied. So maybe not the first year and a half, but the remaining years would all have increment to put toward paying off any bond issuance that was made. So you can see you've got a number of different options, but Nick, you also asked about extending the current TIF. The problem that I see with that option is the same that occurred with trying to extend TIF number 5. I don't think that the school district's outlook on residential projects in a TIF district has changed since the last time that we tried that option. And of course, all of the taxing bodies have to approve in order for us to contact the legislature to extend our TIF.
But we got around that.
We got around that by creating a new TIF. So,
Right. So is that an option?
Yes, it is. And that's what I was talking about with regard to the micro TIF. And I would approach the school board and say that the advantage of a micro TIF is that very few parcels within an area are involved there. So as opposed to the size and geography of TIFs 1, 3, 4, and 6, this would be a relatively small area. And so we're just utilizing the increment that is generated by this project would both cover the requested incentive as well as several $1 million more that the city could use to make other improvements in this area.
Sorry to waste everyone's time on my education on this, but so is a micro TIF, that's a new term for me, is that sitting within a TIF, or is it's a brand new TIF that's...
It's a brand new TIF. Okay. Typically what had been done in the past, and this was done in the city of Aurora, they put a TIF over their entire downtown. And then what they noticed, similar to what we did with TIF number 5, but for other reasons, is that time was marching on before the projects were getting started, and they were missing out on years of increment they could have used to incentivize projects. And so by waiting for the project and TIFing for a specific project allows you to maximize the amount of increment from that project that you're going to be able to use to incentivize it, which really is the essence of TIF, is to utilize the increment generated by projects to incentivize those projects, because but for the incentive, the rate of return on that project is such that it would not otherwise be financed without the help of the incentive.
So we got some options. Thank you.
We've got some options, and I have invited Kane McKenna to attend our November 30th meeting, and they will provide both an overview of their financial analysis of this project, as well as run through those various different options for City Council, and they're really the experts who can really dig in and give you the detailed responses.
Awesome. Thank you. This is that's an exciting project.
Thank you.
Now, Laura just answered my question, was what the options are and how we can look at those and go through those. I'm very excited about the project. I know that, in my mind, I always felt like for probably the last 15 or 20 years, wherever we thought we were going to locate a bridge south of downtown was going to be the definition of our downtown. And I think this starts to try to define that by moving it south and filling that big empty gap that's there. really starts to define where our downtown is and how much more walkable it can be by locating the residential downtown, and how much more vibrant the downtown can be with those residential living units downtown. So I've been a firm believer since we started these discussions, probably back in, I want to say it was 2006, where we really started talking about what we were going to do for streetscape, how we were going to redo our master plan, our downtown plan, and talk about what we really saw happening in this downtown 10, 20, 30, 50 years from now, and how the things that we decide on now truly shape that. And the fact that we're working on the river corridor plan, really trying to fulfill some of the real dreams of the downtown master plan by bringing residential units downtown and being able to utilize TIF to make those projects happen, I think is really what I've always felt TIF is about. To make sure that somehow, some way we get that done. And anytime a project can fund most or all of its incentive, that's a great thing. So whatever we have to do to figure that out, I think this is another project that really just has to happen downtown, that we need to get these done and have multiple choices for people. I mean, the mayor talks about all the time how you have people discussing that. I mean, if one of these was built and was available next year, I'm sure my mom would be here in a heartbeat to be out of the farm fields of Earlville back into, the city of Batavia. And I know a lot of other people that are looking for units like that want to be walkable near the library, shopping, restaurants, all those things that they could do on a daily basis. So I think this is really important for us moving forward, that we find projects like this that we feel good about. And again, we're going to get beat up. There's something somebody's not going to like. They're going to, be unhappy of whatever color it is or whatever brick choice, whatever happens. But I think this is something that has been planned for by a lot of past city councils, and should be and will be supported by future city councils. But I think that we're just in the middle of this, and we have to make sure that these type of projects happen. So I'm really excited about it. I think it's something we can figure out, and we'll figure out how to get everything done. Leah?
Thanks, Alan. So, Austin, I really appreciate the thoughtfulness in using the smaller separate buildings. I think that was something, to Dan's point, that you guys listened, you paid attention, you listened to what the community was saying from other projects. So, really appreciate that. And, I love seeing a very local company that's already very invested in Batavia taking on this project. Because I think, even watching what you were doing with Avenue Marketplace and listening to the residents and trying to give, or, to make changes when it was possible. And so hoping if we move forward with this, that will continue to happen, as I know it will. But I'm curious if CRG has any buildings in the downtown Carmel redevelopment, because I visited Carmel a few years ago and was very impressed with what they were doing with the redevelopment of their downtown area.
Thank you, Leah. John, do you want to talk about your work in Carmel?
Yeah, so our president and founder, Chris Reed, who was not able to attend tonight due to an industry event, and our CFO, Dave Powers, they've been a big part of this project as well. And they're actually, we just broke ground on one of those projects in Carmel here 2 weeks ago to help expand the downtown district kind of off of Range Line in Maine. And so the buildings you saw, the downtown has kind of grown in sections, but yes, we are actually doing our first project in Carmel, about a half mile from our office there. That's helping expand that downtown even further.
Thank you.
And I've had the pleasure of being at their office and seeing their project and what's happening in Carmel as well. And I would love to see activity like that in downtown Batavia. I think the mayor has actually been to one of the CRG sites in, I think it was Lexington, Kentucky. Did you visit one of their buildings there? Newport.
Newport, yeah.
Newport, thank
I
you.
toured it with the fire chief and the fire department chaplain.
There's a lot of downtown communities that they've done work in. Listen, to be honest, they're sitting here because they look at Batavia, and one of the comments that was made to me was, I can't believe this isn't built here yet. And I said, well, guess what, guys? We collectively get to do that. Yes, sir.
Austin, thanks. It looks great. You did listen, and I appreciate that, because it would have been easy to put up say, hey, we're going to go for 6 stories as well. But you didn't, and the scale is down. The number of, again, it's a potentially well, not potentially, it is a prime spot, or will be the prime spot. Again, extending the downtown and starting to fill in the areas that aren't there. So you could have gone, for broke, but you kept it, you scaled it. The colors that I see fit with Batavia. It's the limestone, that shading, and that was important to a lot of people who were complaining about other projects. So, yeah, you're going to get your unfair share of criticism, so you're going to get your unfair share of criticism on this as well from others. But when I look at it, it looks, again, why hasn't something been built there? I've, lived here for 12 years myself, and it's kind of one of those things. It's like, geez, it seems like it's a great location to store all our construction equipment when we're doing things, but it seems like it's a better location to put a building. So I'm happy to see some progress being made here. So looks good so far.
Thank you.
Abby?
I have a question and a comment for you. The space between your current office, the First Street business park there, and this space, and the layout or the map was kind of quick to go by. Does that stay the same size parking lot for your existing businesses? Does that get kind of swept into this project a little bit?
The entire parking field between our kind of existing limestone building and this building will get redone. Much of it will remain the same as far as number of spaces and spaces that serve those customers. That was important to us. We own that building. We've owned that building for 60 years. We're going to continue to own that building, and we want to be able to provide adequate parking for our customers. A portion of that, the south end of that site, does get incorporated into this project. I believe there is going to be a very incredible opportunity to engage that street, which right now has some beautiful historic buildings on one side and then a grassy field on the other. To have a complementary building on one side, I think there's going to be a great opportunity to engage a similar streetscape style concept and feel down there. We want to create a sense of place for that street as well. So we're really excited about the opportunity that we have to engage that street. Yes, there will be surface parking because it's going to be needed for the businesses, but we're really excited about what we think we can deliver as really kind of a pop and a wow factor as you head south of what is traditional, the end of downtown right now at First Street. We're going to pick up a whole extra block of fun and exciting things in our community.
Yeah, does it become like it stay private, but does that access point from right there on First Street stay the same there?
Yeah, that would stay, and the loop would come around where it does now, right by where the food pantry is and the water treatment facility, and then up on the other side. But there's going to be a whole lot more excitement than there is today going in that loop.
I'd say that to Dan's question before about what we've learned about the last one, and the thing that gave me heartburn about the Shody project from long before I was even on council was using the TIF funds for a public parking garage that, in essence, looking at the numbers, would largely be a private lot for the residents. And in thinking, did anything go into your calculations about how many spots? I know that goes into all the calculations, spots per unit, with the working from home aspect, people not leaving like we talked about them leaving during the day, leaving spots open for shopping and restaurants right there.
Yeah, we've done a pretty substantial parking analysis, and it's a conversation we can certainly dig deeper into, but the general thought is we need to provide enough parking in a public facility that the city gets to charge residents for. I mean, it's for anybody's use. It's since, I think at the parking rate that you're agreed to on Shodine, it's an opportunity, the 205 spaces roughly calculates out to maybe $60,000 or $65,000 of income for the city. So the equivalent is we're building in a customer base that's going to probably rent those units, and it's almost a guaranteed revenue source for the city as a public parking structure. I think the important thing is the dynamics of people are changing, as you had mentioned. I won't go back to the slide, but there is a significant amount of surface spaces, the entire width, or the entire length of Chamoy now, which has very few on-street parking spaces, will be engaged to create some on-street parking. So there's going to be, I believe, a very healthy and good mix of available parking, covered parking spaces with street parking spaces, but keep it appropriate in regards to the streetscape so it just doesn't look like a sea of parking, which is kind of what it looks like now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want any more seas of parking. I want well-designed and engaged parking options, but enhance the community.
Right. I mean, $12 million in TIF, I'm not anti-TIF funds at all, but I want to see it all go to the streetscape, aspect, the human scale. So I won.
Ian, do you have any comments tonight?
I do. One is for either Austin or Laura. I just wanted to know how many years are left on this TIF?
2039.
Okay.
18 years.
And then, in all the analytics you guys have done, do you guys have like the percentage of, or what's your target age, family of what you guys are targeting for living here? What is the market saying as people that would be renting these places?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we talked about, and Mr. Mayor brought up, the kind of the retiree that would like to come back and live in a city environment they're kind of an empty nester. I think that was a profile of a tenant that we thought could be very attractive for our customer, or I guess resident base here. In addition to a young professional, Austin talked about the firefighter, the school teacher. We have an economical luxury type of product profile that we'll create with best-in-class amenities and services and restaurants and attracting that type of community to this area. So I think we're thinking about it where it's economical, and it's a value that's affordable for even a retiree on a fixed income, and in addition to a city worker that wants to live downtown and it can benefit from being a part of the local community.
Awesome. Yeah, as I think some people have alluded to, like people are leaving downtown Chicago for the city life in the suburbs. So looking for, like, we can all work from anywhere at this point. So trying to target some of those people would be beneficial to adding vibrancy to the towns. Appreciate it.
And just have,
Actually, if I may.
1 second, I just need to get into the record that Alderman Vogelsinger arrived at 8:33.
And on your point, which is, it couldn't be infinitely more on point for the sense of urgency for now. Batavia is an incredible community, and anybody who spends any time here realizes that. People typically stay and they put down roots, and there is a mass migration of people looking at options, and will be, according to the cycles and the trends that they've looked at, for several years. We named this project, let me take my developer hat off and just say as a resident, we need projects like this style of best-in-class amenity living to attract these young, cool, hip professionals that we want to have in this community. I think there's a tremendous opportunity to move forward as quickly as we can to bring this type of product to market, because I believe that there will be a significant need, both for age-in-place seniors and for people to have options as they come out of their city and work wherever they want, and work at their cabana poolside looking at the river.
Okay, Mark?
Yeah, I wrote it down and I forgot to ask it. Would be driving up price, but I want to bring it up because former Alderman O'Brien would have liked it. He was big on streetscape, and I know that several of us have talked about more Wooners in town. And it would seem to me Chamoy in front of this spot, actually what I've always thought around is Chamoy and First and up to Water, and having like another set of roads like that. Was your road concept purely, hey, it's a road, or microTIF might help to expand that and give, again, it's more walkable, it's more pedestrian friendly, there's a bunch of things in it, it's human scale, all the things that we could do when we have an opportunity, because you're talking about ripping up some streets.
Yeah, absolutely. You made a comment earlier about listening to the people, and I appreciate those comments. That's who we are and how we are, and we're also observing the success of River Street and what that has done to engage a community on a street, and what that's done to the buildings around. Right now, what we have budgeted in our projections that we've shared with the city staff is the 2011 streetscape plan, which is wide sidewalks, I think there's some pavers in there, engaging the tree lines as they come through. Would we be open to exploring other opportunities? The answer is absolutely. It boils down to, there's several options to move forward. You hit the nail on the head. More TIF dollars, more opportunity. There's a trade-off with, on the surface, it says, hey, let's go option 3, right? Let's create a new TIF, and there's more opportunity there for a bigger impact. Yes. But there's also risks and challenges and pitfalls that go with that, of which you are all infinitely well aware of what that process is. And from a development standpoint side, it scares us because we've got hundreds of thousands of dollars of development costs that we have to put in for architectural, engineering, design, all predicated on the hope that it's gonna work out. And so if we go that route, it's the old risk reward thing. It's not unfamiliar to everybody. There is a risk that goes with that, and similar to how you guys did an agreement with the Shodine folks in regards to development costs. There's ways to mitigate the risk, and there's other things that we can do, and we're happy to explore those. But I think any one of those 3 options leading us to the path of delivering the best project possible and finding that healthy balance with risk and reward is exactly in line with what we'd like.
Okay, thanks. Okay, any other comments or questions for Austin while we got him here? Okay, thank you for coming down tonight. Thanks for introducing the group and all of you for coming. For John online, I really appreciate the in-depth, quick review of the project. I know we kind of let it go over what we normally do for time frame, but I think we all wanted to, understand it as best we could and give you the best feedback that we could so we can move this forward.
We greatly appreciate the time and the discussion and any feedback. I think everybody knows how to get a hold of me, but I'm happy to have a dialogue with anybody in regards to this. And we're excited for our next meeting, the 30th. And you folks will have Kane McKenna here,
Yes.
and we'll be able to talk a little bit more detailed about
Nuts and bolts.
nuts and bolts and options, but appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you. And
Thank
happy
you.
Thanksgiving.
Okay, up next is item number 8, which is ordinance 2165, amending the municipal code relating to water usage rates. Alderman Cerrone.
Yes, the next 2 ordinances are kind of together. Same write-up. I'll just turn it over to Gary to give a synopsis.
Thank you, Alderman. We are bringing before you tonight ordinances to raise the water usage rates as well as the sanitary sewer usage rates. These ordinances, plural, contemplate a 3% water usage rate increase and an 8% sanitary sewer usage rate increase. I'll briefly talk about each utility. Water Street, we do have some major projects ongoing right now. As you all are aware, our water treatment plant is currently undergoing a major rehabilitation project with reconstruction of our radium sludge lagoon, redoing plant number 1, the Tonka tanks, bulk salt handling facilities. We're also included in the 2022 budget funds to start the Southeast Chlorine Booster Station, which is required to keep chlorine levels adequate in the southeast section of town. And with Prairie Street reconstruction, we will be having the water main replacement as part of that project coming up here as well. So those are some of the big projects in water behind the need for the rate increase. On the wastewater side, we did talk about some of it earlier in the meeting, but I'll circle back and again, really high level, provide a summary and a reminder of where this all started back in almost 6, 7 years, 8 years ago now. If you'll recall, or for those of you who may not know, our treatment plant is subject to an EPA National Pollution Discharge Elimination System permit, NPDES. And there are NPDES permits for various things. We have an NPDES permit on the storm sewer side. But we also have one on the water side, but we also have one for our wastewater treatment plant, as does every other wastewater treatment plant in America. And it's been a decade, almost 2 decades now, going, I think 18 years, I think the Fox River Study Group has been in existence. The state of Illinois is working with a group to study the Fox River to establish discharge criteria from treatment plants. And that study has been ongoing and actually is now coming almost to a completion, which is pretty exciting. But back when we started, back in 2015, when we renewed our last NPDES permit, the EPA put a new phosphorus limit on us. And the phosphorus limit, as well as ultimately the capacity of the plant, are kind of the 2 key driving factors, in addition to the multitude of end of life issues that we have and obsolescence issues. So back in 2015, phosphorus was set at a new limit of 1.0 milligrams per liter. The Fox River, and it was known at that time that phosphorus would go lower. So when we redid the plant as part of the 2018 and 2019 improvements, we were required to treat for phosphorus. We were allowed to treat for phosphorus using chemical treatment processes. That got us down to the 1.0, and basically it's called Chem-P, as you might imagine. So we treat for phosphorus today to meet the 1.0 requirement using chemicals. Using chemicals is expensive, and as we go lower than 1.0, it would become even more expensive. It was never intended to be a permanent solution. It was intended to be the interim solution to meet the interim guideline, or requirement, I should say, not a guideline, of 1.0. Now that the Fox River Study Group is coming to the end of their study, they have concluded, actually kind of pleasantly to our surprise, that if treatment plants lower the limits below 0.5, there probably won't be much incremental improvement in the river. That does not mean that the EPA is going to settle on 0.5, but it's actually a good thing for us that is the results of the study, because that means that the EPA may indeed settle on 0.5 and not a lower value than that. In order to achieve 0.5, we're going to need to treat phosphorus biologically, called BioP, and that involves several new processes at the plant. And again, those are one of the key driving factors behind the 2015 and 2016 master plan. Increasing capacity from 4.2 million gallons per day to 4.9 million gallons per day is still going to need to happen. That will be done as part of phase 2B. So we're now endeavoring in the second phase of improvements, and we've needed to split that second phase of improvements into two parts from an economic standpoint and really from a functional standpoint, because we don't need today necessarily that increased capacity. So we're going to probably do 2A and follow up fairly quickly after that, a few years down the road with 2B, but they don't need to happen at the same time. We also spoke earlier today about some of the improvements within 2A, but 2A is estimated at over $25 million of improvements, and that is kind of the driving factor behind the rate increases, and is very similar to, I've had this conversation internally. I'm a Fox Metro customer, and up and down the Fox River, virtually every treatment plant has gone through this same need to raise rates due to the treatment of phosphorus. My personal sewer bill, it's been about 5 years ago now, increased by 200%. I mean, and they just did it all in one fell swoop. One day I had a $30 sewer bill, and now my sewer bill, I mean, it's high. But it is what it is, and that's up and down the river. Batavia, since 2012, has taken an incremental approach. We have gradually increased rates year after year, trying not to have that big hit on our customers. Peggy prepared what an average customer, what the impact is going to be. And we've used this average customer based on really kind of all of our customers, so there's certainly going to be many people that'll be higher than this and many people that'll be lower. But with a 3% water rate increase, the impact to a customer would be approximately $1.16 per month. And for an 8% sewer increase, the impact to a customer would be approximately $3.98 per month. So those are based on our generic average customers that we use to provide some frame of reference. With that, I think I'll turn it over in case there's any questions.
No, I appreciate that, and that was my question as to what would this mean to the average user. I appreciate you turning your own painful experience into empathy, not spite. So rolling this out slowly is great. Did anybody on the council have any questions?
Mark does have one. Go ahead, Mark.
It's probably more for Peggy. So with the water rate, had everything stayed the same from a projection on the water reclamation projects, would we have been looking at a rate increase anyway?
For 2022, yes, we would. They just would not be as far out.
Okay. What were we planning? Were we still planning an 8% and it's just not for as long, or what? I'm just trying to understand the difference and that impact.
We were planning a 6%. And then that changed with when I got the new numbers.
Okay. So 6% for multiple years, or just for one? I mean, obviously some of the multiple years depends on if the price does come in that high, and we can obviously, that's a year by year decision, but I was just trying to understand, were we looking at 6% for 3 to 5 years, or were we looking at?
No, it would have been less, but again, that could change based on other needs of the utility, but we would have been okay if we would have still been at that number, but we're needing to come up with an additional $30 million.
Sure. Okay, so we went from 6 to 8, basically. For at least
right,
this,
and then extended
upcoming.
them out.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, because I know when we talked, I don't remember how many years ago we went through, and we actually had projections of, I think, what the next 8 or 10 years were going to be for our utilities, what we thought the rate increases were going to be, because we knew we were going to have some. And those numbers changed back and forth depending on what we thought the projects were going to be, what we thought we were going to be able to get through EPA loans at low interest, where we were really going to go. And because some of the changes, especially from the EPA, really weren't known, we kind of were told that, from our staff, that those numbers were probably going to change. One way or the other, they were going to change, but this was a good idea that we knew we were going to have rate increases, over the long haul, that there were going to be some rate increases every year in most of the utilities. I still think it's amazing to me that we haven't raised electric rates in so long,
Since 2015.
to get where we are. Anybody else in the room have any questions, or anybody online?
So how many years are we going to be doing this then?
28.
Out to 2028.
6 more budget cycles.
But we aren't approving that today.
No, we're approving the 2022
Yes.
changes in the rate. And that's something that I think, even when we do it for 1 year, when we do it at the budget cycle, it's good to know that we are going to have to keep doing this, so that way we are aware of that as we move through, when we start talking about other things that we might approve in the future for those utilities, that will add more to that increase that we've already identified that's going to be needed now to pay off the bonds for what we're doing today and into the next couple of years.
Right. As the project is approved and we seek the IEPA loan, when we are approved for that and receive that loan, that's the commitment to multiple years of continuing to raise it.
Yeah, I as a taxpayer, and I consistently vote against tax increases, but when the rates come and there's a specific purpose and a specific benefit to the rate increase, I support it in this case and appreciate the work and the phasing in throughout. So with, did anyone else have any questions, comments? If not, I would recommend the City Council the approval of Ordinance 2165, amending the municipal code relating to water usage rates.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Who was the second? Was it Miller?
Miller.
Thank you. I thought it was. Cerrone?
Aye.
Vogelsinger?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Rosato? Beck?
Aye.
Connolly?
Aye.
Chanzit?
Aye.
Sofa?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Aaron? Aye. Lehman?
Aye.
Ayazi?
Aye.
Lane?
Aye.
Ewer?
Aye.
Motion carried 13-0.
Right, Nick, number 9 is yours
Sure.
as well?
Number 9, I'll turn it right over. Gary, did you have anything additional to add specifically for the sanitary sewage usage rates?
No, I'm sorry. I covered both of those at the same time, so I don't have anything
Right.
additional.
That's. Did anybody have any questions? I'm certainly concerned and not taking it lightly that it's an 8% increase. $4 a month doesn't sound much. Obviously, there's a cumulative effect over the years that'll grow, and we can see where we're at every year. Again, this ordinance is strictly for next year only. Did anybody have any questions or comments? In lieu of that, I will make a motion to recommend the City Council the approval of Ordinance 2166, amending the municipal code relating to sanitary sewage usage rates.
Second, Miller.
Roll call, please.
Cerrone?
Aye.
Vogelsinger?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Rosato? Beck?
Aye.
Connolly,
Aye.
Shannon,
Aye.
Sofa,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron, aye. Lehman,
Aye.
Ayazi,
Aye.
Malay,
Aye.
and Ewer.
Aye.
Motion carried 13-0.
All right, and one more for public utilities, Resolution 21-108R, approving task order number 15 with Trotter and Associates for engineering, design phase 2A improvements to the wastewater treatment facility. Alderman
And
Jerome.
one more for me to turn over to Gary for a synopsis.
Thank you. Alderman Wolf, the prior two items, do you want those on a consent agenda or a regular agenda?
Consent.
That's the easy way out.
No, I'm just thinking about what's going to be on our agenda on the 6th.
I agree. If I really thought differently, I'd fight you on it.
You didn't raise your hand, Nick.
Nor did you.
Thank you, Alderman. Before you tonight is approval of task order 15 with Trotter and Associates. This is for the engineering design phase of phase 2A improvements to the wastewater treatment facility. Very briefly, those of you wondering how we came to have an association with Trotter and Associates, there was a public process back in 2012 where design firms were invited to make presentations and present their qualifications. And ultimately, City Council at that time did select Trotter and Associates to provide engineering services. Throughout the years, we have had some independent reviews of like the master plans to make sure we're on the right track. But this is why, you always will see this association with Trotter and Associates as we go through these various phases of the treatment plant. Phase 2 will be split into two sub-phases, as I've said. Again, phase 2A includes several equipment issues that are at end of life, rehabilitation of the headworks, the excess flow clarifier, primary clarifiers, tertiary filtration. In total, the project is estimated at about 26.6 million. And our goal is to get under construction with this phase in early 2023, but that'll depend on timing of permitting through the IEPA as well as completion of this engineering. So this is a task order for a not to exceed amount of 1.705 million. And then additional task orders will follow in the future, likely in late 2022 for the 2023 budget year for construction administration. I do not want to jinx us. I do not want to put Trotter on the spot, but I will point to their extremely successful track record with the last construction project. They did the engineering design, and if you recall, that construction project, which was $20+ million, came in under budget. I mean, they did a fantastic job with regards to the lack of change orders and oversight on that project. So knock on wood, this project will go just as smoothly. So I will recommend that we approve task order 15.
Thank you. And with that, let's get it out there that we expect this one to be under budget as well. You could tell Scott and Jerry. My question, we're approving this, but what in the budget of 22 is part of this, and what in the budget of 23 is part of this? Is this all in 23?
Well, this is in 22's budget. I'm trying to pull up to point you to the, yeah.
But it's not really going to be complete till 23, correct?
So again, this is design engineering.
Engineering money.
This is only design engineering.
Right.
And this will continue throughout the entire year of 2022. Ideally, we'll be done with design in 2022, but if design carries into 23, then certainly we'll have to. In '23, we'll be coming back to you as part of next year's budget process, coming back to you with another task order for construction oversight.
Yeah, and if you look at the budget, the general budget for the Phase 2A, you've got roughly almost $3.5 million worth of engineering in it. And this is roughly half of it that gets spent to design it and get it ready to build. And then the rest of that will be used during oversight during construction.
But there's no construction in this budget. That'll be handled in '23.
Right, this is just the engineering side of it.
Okay, just wanted to clarify. Anybody else have any questions, comments? Okay. With that, I share Gary's comfort with Trotter and would recommend to City Council approval of Resolution 21-108R, approving the task order number 15 with Trotter and Associates for the engineering design of Phase 2A improvements to the wastewater treatment facility.
Second, Ewer.
Roll call, please.
Saron,
Aye.
Vogelsinger,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Rosado, Beck,
Aye.
Connolly,
Aye.
Shanzit,
Aye.
Sofa,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Barron,
Aye.
Lehman,
Aye.
Nagasi,
Aye.
Malay,
Aye.
and Ewer.
Aye.
Motion carried 13-0.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Before we move on to 11, I have one more question, Gary. On the phase that we've completed already up to date, have we ever settled the end of that contract? That's still not done?
I'm going to let Laura, address that.
It is not done.
Okay, so we're still working on that. Okay.
That's correct.
And we know that we're not going to use the general contractor that has anything to do with the general contractor that did the
That's
last work.
correct.
Even though it came in under budget, there was still issues.
Right.
Not with the engineering firm, not with anything else, just with that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, if we can get an update at some point, I think that would be good for us to know
Sure thing.
where that's at and where we think that's going to end.
Happy to do so.
Okay. Up next then is item number 11, a discussion on groundwater use restrictions related to environmental cleanup efforts that we brought from a former meeting to this meeting.
We did table it from the last meeting, and Laura and I talked earlier today. Again, if it got late this evening, like I said, I'll leave it to council's discretion if you guys want to jump into this topic or delay. It is not a time-sensitive issue.
No.
But it is something eventually that will deserve a decent discussion.
I think, I mean, it's 9:03. I think we're fine, unless anybody else wants to leave. I don't like it when everybody's masked, because all I can see is eyes, and they're rolling.
I think
So what I'll say about this is that it is a very technical matter. We have worked very closely with our environmental consultants to review information and data about the environmental cleanup that has been performed at 24 North Batavia Avenue. The current owner, who is the bank, who is a bank, has requested us to pass an ordinance that would prohibit wells, drinking water wells on the property. But there are many considerations that the city needs to weigh in order to make a determination as to whether that would be prudent or not, because there are risks associated with doing that. So it's a pretty meaty topic, is what I will say.
Okay. So just so everybody knows, 24 North is,
The original location of Avenue
Chevrolet.
Chevrolet, and the reason why it is thusly named, because it is on the avenue.
so that would be at the Batavia.
Top of the hill.
Avenue and Houston Street,
South side,
the brick building
yes.
on the east side of Batavia Avenue, on the corner. Immediately across from the mobile station and immediately across from the Shell station.
So Laura, is this median a lengthy topic? Because if we go down that path, the risk is that others will say, me too, because
Yes, we have previously had requests from other property owners in our downtown area where they also have known environmental issues who made this kind of request in the past and the city refused. We also, though, we did pass an ordinance for the One Washington Place.
Not yet, we haven't. but
Not yet, we
may
haven't.
have to.
But we will have to, because we ourselves are responsible for the environmental cleanup, and we know that we're going through that process. So
Yeah.
that's an important distinction.
That's an important distinction. We're actually going to do work out there to clean things up and then probably have to pass an ordinance. Others in the past have requested that we simply pass an ordinance so that they didn't have to do the work. That's the distinction.
So we will have to pass an ordinance for the same type of thing after we clean it up?
Yeah, I'll jump into that very briefly.
I think we've had that discussion before, but go ahead, because
Yeah,
there's enough
because
new people that didn't hear
we
it.
know that there are contaminated soils. Those soils are going to be hauled away to a landfill. They're special waste, they're not hazardous waste. There's a distinction there. So they can go to a landfill, and even after the soils are all gone off the site, and we receive the EPA's determination that there's no more contamination on the site, as a belt and suspenders approach, the EPA may very well require us to still initiate a groundwater use restriction out there, which would prevent the installation of wells. That part is not known until you kind of get to that end of the process, but we lay it out there as a possibility.
So why would another entity come in and ask for that type of protection on a piece of property if they're not going to do anything? Is that to avoid having to do anything?
Okay, so there's been, and now in my time here, there's been a couple of property owners. My one example that I gave in here was another property owner elsewhere in downtown who did not desire to do any cleanup work. They simply wanted us to do a groundwater use restriction so that they could essentially have the EPA, give them a pass because they've got a groundwater use restriction. City Council at that time said, that's not how we operate. We want to promote a clean environment. Therefore, we weren't going to give the groundwater use restriction, and that property still hasn't been cleaned up. That property owner one day will be faced with that because if they want to ever sell their property, they're going to have to clean it up. That's different from what we're talking about here on the avenue. This property owner is faced with a situation where, in order to clean up their property, they would have to excavate into the Water Street right away, the Houston Street right away. It's a major project that goes way beyond their property limits, which is a little different than One Washington Place. They may be willing to do other things to demonstrate kind of their skin in the game, so to speak. So that goes to some of our recommendations in the back, in that they would have to submit all their testing and all their modeling documents to the EPA to receive the EPA's concurrence on kind of where the contamination is. And then after that, again, have a one more bite at the apple from the city's consultant, our consultant, to make sure we finally confer with all the findings. Because right now we're not sure we're on the same page, to be honest with you. So we want to make sure we ultimately get a final sense of comfort. And then this is where kind of their restrictions come in. So this is where they get kind of skin in the game, and that we would. Our staff is recommending that council would require them to have a permanent restriction in place so that when we have a water service repair on Houston Street and we encounter contaminated soil, which we literally just did, that if we incur costs for that, for testing, professional services, or costs for that for disposal of contaminated soils, that this property owner would be responsible for those costs and not the citizens of Batavia. Those are kind of some of the restrictions that would be placed, and not sure that that property owner even would agree to those restrictions. But he's coming to us with hat in hand saying, you know, we want you to do a groundwater use restriction so that we can get to a point with the EPA. And the city in turn is saying, we want you to do something, and this is something you can do. So as Laura said, this is kind of gets to be into weeds technical discussion.
And an element of it is that they're trying to get their remediation plan approved. IEPA won't allow them to have, they won't approve the plan without a commitment from us
For the groundwater use restriction.
for the groundwater use restriction. So it's a little bit cart before the horse.
Yeah, and the highway agreement basically is an agreement that, again, we're acknowledging, we know that there's contamination within our right-of-way. So we need to put some onus on them, and our onus on them could be that they have to clean it all up, and they have to go in there and excavate it all, but there's a practical aspect to that as well.
I guess one of the questions that I would have right off the bat is the area in which that is in, I believe, is going to have some redevelopment or some development or some changes, just to the east of that. And we already know where we've worked and there's contamination is east of that property. So I don't feel like we as a city should in any way, shape, or form reduce the liability of a property owner until we know, one, the scope of where we think the contamination is, and until we know really what they're willing to say yes to help with that, because we're not going to get stuck with it.
No,
And I think if we were to have,
Alderman.
if we had an agreement where we said that, you can't drill a well on there, well, that, I don't know that absolves them from not being responsible for having to clean up things outside their own property that was generated on their property. And because if it's as far as where I saw the hole on Houston Street, that means it could be on other properties east of that or further south of that may be redeveloped, or that could stop redevelopment on those if there's contamination there.
So that's why I spoke of them submitting all their documents to the EPA and then us having a final opportunity again to verify, because we are maybe not entirely on the same page right now regarding their modeling and regarding their mapping. And so we need to, as you said, get a definitive and very comfortable feel for where we think the contamination room is. That's definitely a condition. Another condition is, again, if we're ever going to incur costs, we've got to make sure that we are covered, because we shouldn't incur those costs.
Right. And I think of the area that we're talking about just east of there, as you get to Water Street, that's all been filled in. That's not natural, underneath. Well, I guess it'd be natural underneath majority of that, but a lot of that is fill. That was put in when that whole area went from a river channel or man-made river channel or whatever it originally was, and then was actually filled in to build the bank buildings, the shopping center, all of that sits on fill. And we know from the experience of what happened at the McDonald's building when they went to redo that, a lot of that is not very good fill. So to me, the possibility of that contamination being moved or transferred to other places is pretty big.
There's also public knowledge, I'm not spilling anyone's secrets, that there was contamination from the 2 gas stations up on the corner. There's also contamination from when the oil company was here down at the bottom of the hill. So there are 3 other sources of contamination in addition to this property. Those other sources of, it's unfortunate in that this property owner is the one coming to us right now and asking for something. The other property owners, the gas stations in particular, I do know they've gone through the EPA. They've had to do monitoring wells, if I recall. So it's not like they haven't ignored it. They've been through an EPA process as well. It's just that right now, here today in 2021, this property owner is asking for something, and therefore these are the restrictions we're going to place on them. They may say, well, but that can't be all of our contamination, and our response would be, okay, then you're going to have to prove that. I mean, that onus doesn't fall to us. That's going to fall to them.
And that's the thing I think I want to make sure that I'm being clear about that. I think we as the city need to be protected in whatever way we can and kind of be open-ended on where their responsibility lies. Because again, like Gary just said, they have to prove that somebody else caused that, not them, or not their ownership of the property that they have. Because I know the property across the street at 27 North, when that was purchased from an oil company, the process to go through to confirm the lack of contamination off that property, there are wells on other people's properties that are maintained by that owner that have to be tested on a regular basis. And had to go through all of that to secure financing to buy the property to prove that there was no off-site or on-site contamination. I mean, that's pretty grueling stuff to go through. Does anybody else have any comments or questions? Or should we just ruminate on this a little bit, since this is not time sensitive, and to me it is a big question of how we handle it.
I think that sounds like a good idea.
I hear your guidance to reduce our risk as much as possible.
Right.
To try to reserve as much potential sort of last say in the matter before we have to pass the ordinance, you know. So I think those are two good pieces of guidance to give us to say how far can we push to get those things before we come back and say.
Because I think before we'd even consider an ordinance to, you know, prohibit them from groundwater wells, there would have to be an agreement that anything off-site that's attributed to their contamination, if we incurred costs to do it, we'd have to be reimbursed. You know, I mean, that would be, I think, it would be a non-starter for me if that wasn't there.
Their initial question to us many months ago now was simply, you know, can the city just enact a groundwater ordinance? And I mean, just to reaffirm tonight, it sounds like I already know the answer. Many years ago, council said they weren't going to do that. They wanted to assure cleanup. I'm assuming the answer is the same tonight, that just giving them a blank groundwater use ordinance is off the table, right? That's a no.
There would have to be, to me, several things attached to it.
Right, yes, and that's what we're saying tonight, is there would have to be several things attached to it.
And we'd have to have a couple more lawyers in the room before we said yes to it.
Understood.
We may rely on some of your expertise, the two to my right.
We do have very good environmental consultants working for us, that we have a real high level of Huff and Huff is the firm.
And then we have a very good specialized environmental attorney
as well.
Okay. I think that's where we should go, and, you know, I guess keep us informed, and let's make this a regular discussion until we get to the point where we need to have the 14 of us make a decision on it.
Great.
Okay. All right, then up next would be project status.
I just have two very small matters beyond what I brought up last night in the administrator's report. For the active transportation plan project, that's part of the strategic action plan. we have a stakeholder group meeting tomorrow from 1 o'clock to 2:30. And then I also had an opportunity to set up a meeting with Hitchcock Design Group on Friday to talk about further exploration of options A and B and the potential cost and time to do the hydrological study. I also included Allison on that invitation to Hitchcock Group to have that conversation, and she said that the Park District Board would also be interested in doing the same thing for option E. So we set up a time to talk about that on Friday. It would be my recommendation if the Park Board was not interested in expending resources on further exploration of A, I'm thinking City Council feels the same way about the further exploration of the option E. So maybe it'll be some type of cost-sharing agreement that we split the cost on the one that we believe we both have some agreements on pursuing, which is B, and then each independently would pay for, we'd do the A exploration and they would do the E exploration. And so I'm going to have that conversation with Hitchcock Group and Allison Friday afternoon, so I should have something more to report to you at our next meeting, which is the third thing that I wanted to bring up, is that it appears that we do not have any agenda items for next Tuesday. And so we are going to skip that meeting, and therefore our next meeting will be November 30th.
Anybody have any objections to that? Okay, good.
I do have a question, though.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yes.
So a couple things with Hitchcock and the Park District. So is there a reason that the study, the IDNR report from 2002 that talks about the width of the river, the depth of the river, the flow of the river, why that's not accepted for A? I mean, they and even there's in that discussion, there's talks of weirs in that report. Why are those reports not valid? It was only 20 years ago. It wasn't 20,000 years ago. It was 20 years ago.
But, it's beyond my technical expertise as to how the river has changed in 20 years. I don't know if it has changed a lot or if it is insignificant.
It's just gotten lower. And
But
that's really about it. I mean, to me, as a layperson that goes out and gets in it in a boat or tries to go places in the boat, it's just gotten lower.
Yeah, I mean,
I think the
pretty much
majority of
bedrock.
that is because of the dam breach.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much on bedrock.
Yeah.
The bottom of the river is, I mean, you can see the bedrock right over there. So I'm just curious, and I guess I would want that answer because we're going to go and spend money and get the same result that they had 20 years ago. I mean, that's.
So, I mean, I can't ask.
And I'm curious
do
as
things
to
change in
that.
20 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that may be a good question for you to ask on Friday, Laura, that, is there any validity still to the hydraulic modeling and stuff that they did back then? Because they showed us depth, they showed us widths. I mean, all that stuff
Yeah, it's all in the
was
report,
there.
and that's, anyway. Question 2, and this is, obviously involves the Park District a little. I think we've talked about B and E, and even, my conversations with Pat Callahan, it's like, well, it's all conceptual. It's not exactly what it's going to look like, because E, as drawn, we've all said no, because not right up against the building, not, that grading is class 3. It's not something that, it's not Yorkville, which is really what the Park District is shooting for. And so they said, hey, we want whitewater. Whitewater can be accomplished with B in the same thing. So it's like, it's really the same. B and E are very similar. And in fact, the residents voted B and E very similarly because they're like, I can't really tell the difference. So I'll pick this one first and this one second because they didn't really understand probably. So I'm just curious, they have this desire for E, but is it as drawn E, because even Pat Callahan said, no, that's conceptual. So I'm just curious as to that, and I'd like a deeper discussion on that, because if it's just, hey, we're looking for something that has a bit of a whitewater attraction, many of us that have talked about B have said, yes, you can have that. It's more like Yorkville in a B design and just not keeping any parts of the dam and not running a whitewater course right next to a building are the objections that a lot of us have even to E. So I'm just trying to understand what they're shooting for, because they're both going to have impoundments further up north to create that anyway.
Right.
So I don't think that really either of those changes the hydrology much between B and E, because you're still have an impoundment, which is meant to keep the pond at its same height. So I don't know that really changes anything. So I'm more than happy to join a discussion with anybody in the Park District to understand that more as well. So that's just, I'm confused.
One of the things that Allison mentioned to me with E was that they said if, having a next challenge isn't, we could move it further north. But it seems to me like, and other staff have mentioned, that you'd have to move it almost all the way up to the boat launch in order to not be dealing with a cliff at the side. And then you still have overhead power lines, no matter where you are on the east side of the east bank of the river, too, to have to contend with.
And the fire department said they were more okay with it being
On the west bank.
On the west bank. To me, it seems like a non-starter to talk about that drawing again. If they're looking at that drawing, which is not a good drawing, it's not viable in so many ways.
But
I
if
just don't
they're
even
exploring it on their own at their own cost.
So we're getting down to this whole thing that it's like, if they have one vote and we have one vote, and they choose E and we choose A or B, it doesn't matter, then we're nowhere. We go nowhere, because I don't think that you're convincing anybody. I don't think anybody here would be convinced to go to E as drawn. I said that flat out from the beginning. I would not do E, because that's practically a waterfall as drawn, and against the building is just insane.
And I don't think I'd say that we're nowhere, because I think still we have to remember we own the dam. And if we want to get money from the state and we want to take the dam out, we as the city can take the dam out.
Sure.
We can rearrange the dam and maintain a pond. We can pick an A or a B, and we could move forward with that.
No, good point.
Right. So I don't think that we're going to get to the point where we're like this and we can't make a decision and we can't move forward. I think we have to get to the point where we're more like this and we can make a decision together and move forward and share some of the cost, and not just say, you know what, we've been talking about this for 30 years, it needs to happen and it needs to get done. I think we have to get to the point where we can agree on that. And I think that's even true amongst the council members here. I think if we get to that next step and we feel like there is more agreement than 6 to 7 or 7 to 7 to go forward with one of the concepts, then I think it's incumbent on us to try to figure out how we can then get together with the Park District and make a decision on how we get to one ideal and move forward with it, so that we don't end up not getting anything done. Because I think it's really important. I mean, it was readily apparent to me tonight, there's a whole lot more people that are excited about the downtown of Batavia than just the people that sit in this room on a regular basis. So I think it's really important that we do keep moving things forward and keep working on these and keep compromising and moving to situations that make things work. Not that we just keep talking about and, oh, I don't like that or I don't like this. I've changed some of the ideas that I've had over the time I've been on the council, and a lot of people have changed to try to get things done. So I think that that's something we have to make sure that we agree we can figure out how to do that. Hey, does anybody have any others tonight, other than the others we've already talked about?
I was just going to make a comment. I know we had heard from a resident earlier, maybe this week, last week, with concerns about the stop sign on Main Street.
Yes.
And we said we would, or you would, ask the police department to increase enforcing. And I was just going to say that I have seen many people pulled over on Main Street in the last few days. There have been.
You were right in front of me
I
on
don't
Main
wanna
Street and saw the
say
one at Jefferson
good,
tonight.
but
There was one at Jefferson that was pulled over tonight.
Yeah, so, and just in the last 2 days, I've seen 3 or 4 vehicles pulled over just driving up and down Main Street, so.
They were sitting out there tonight on the way here.
Yeah, that's what I was just saying, so.
I have to remind myself because sometimes I don't pay real close attention to fully stopping at that stop sign on the way to work.
I would agree that I have increased my stopping, so.
unless it's a
Nick, you have your hand up.
I do, and on purpose. Just a quick question along those lines of speeding, and I've brought this up before, and I don't know what our, as a city, what our authority is or isn't, but there's new technology as far as speed radar, and I've seen other communities do it in school zones. Do we have the authority to look into that or even authorize that? Or is that something statewide or relegated to the city or city of Chicago? Do you know, Laura?
It definitely isn't relegated to the city of Chicago because I believe that it's been in the newspaper, another suburb of Chicago who had some problems with their contract for either red light cameras or radar.
I know red lights received a lot of bad publicity, but the speed, and I've seen it more in other states, but the speed radar in school zones seems to be getting, it's something I would support. I just don't know if it's legal, if it's justifiable. I don't think there's a cost to the city. The company does it, but I don't know. How can we?
I know the answer to that question. It's only allowable in the city of Chicago.
It is.
Yes. Yeah. Speed cameras are only allowable in the city of Chicago under this current legislation.
Thanks.
And remember the way it's written up, Nick. If I'm working on your car and I'm driving it and I speed through a school zone, you get the ticket.
Well, why would I give you the car then to fix it?
Just saying that.
It is on me.
That's my hang up with it. And the first thing I ever came down to City Hall for to fight against, I think it was 18 years old, was when they wanted to do that photocop in Batavia, the original version of it out on Kirk Road, and it was taking pictures of license plates. And that's how the ticket was written, and that's still how it's written. And I know that from certain people that have had my car, and I got a ticket. I'll leave it at that.
Well, and I mean, it is what it is. I'm not the red light cameras have issues. A lot of their revenue is from turning slowly on reds, and there's issues, and there's been some payback and some stuff, but in school zones, it's hard to argue. Whoever's driving the car and whoever, if you're fixing my car and you speed and I get the ticket, I'm going to come to you. But I know we have issues of speeding on the side streets, but we also have issues of we don't have enough police to police it and enforce it. So it seems like at least something to look into. But if it's not legal outside of the city of Chicago, then it's a moot point.
I've seen Alderman Chanzit's hand up.
He keeps on putting it up.
Periodically.
Dan, I see your hands up again. Are you waving at us, or do you want to talk?
I was wavering back and forth. One, you mentioned the photocop thing. I'm glad someone else other than me remembers the controversy from it. That said, I got a red light ticket in a neighboring community about 3 communities away from here. I have not spent a single dollar in that community because I got one of those tickets. They got all of the money from me they're ever going to get from me. It is a bad technology. It's not good, and I could never ever support having that kind of technology in the city of Batavia.
And like I said, I differentiate between red light cameras and school zone speed cameras. During school hour, I mean, it's only operable during, school hours, etc. So I get that, and I've got my fair share of red light tickets. I haven't stopped spending money in those communities. Unfortunately, I don't have
It feels very empowering to let them know that they're going to get another sales tax dollar out of you for the rest of your life. It feels good.
I think the only one I could support is if it was on a school bus and people that go by and it immediately blows all 4 tires on their car so they can't go any further because they have to learn that you can't pass a school bus with the red flashing lights.
That opens up a whole different can of worms, but I'm not against discussion on that either.
I'd have cars outside of my house every day then.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, there's got to be a way to stop that because, the reality, or especially around schools, we're trying to make things safer. We're trying to get sidewalks to all the schools. We're trying to get sidewalks everywhere so that all of the people in the city can use them. And then we end up with speeding issues around schools. We end up with, people that can't stop for a bus with red flashing lights on. I think the biggest thing is we have an entire populace that can't get away from their phones when they're driving a car. I know I've complained about this before, but I still see it even, 3 days ago. On Friday, I saw somebody go through the stop sign at McKee Street and Van Ortwick at 40 miles an hour. Never looked, and I was sitting at the intersection. I knew they weren't going to stop. Halfway through the intersection, I let the horn rip in the car I was in, and they locked up all 4 tires trying to figure out where the horn was coming from and why somebody was honking at them. Because they weren't paying attention to what they were doing. It's really frustrating because I don't want to wait till somebody gets killed. There's got to be things we can do that can help with that. Abby?
Well, we talked about this a little bit during when Nick brought up the idea of dropping the speed limits in the citywide and how that's expensive to study, and that cops can't be everywhere, so it's not actually an effective method for reducing speed necessarily. But a question I had is, in terms of the traffic calming and those other things that we said we were going to put into the budget over the next couple of years, what if we did drop the speed limit 5 miles an hour? And yes, that might lead to some more tickets because more people would be speeding. Could we direct that money to fund the improvements that would actually reduce speed and physically slow people down, with the hope that we don't have to give out tickets, that we calm the streets enough that nobody would be speeding? We achieve the ultimate goal of just making it safer, because it's not a money grab, it's not punish anybody. It is because we have to make the streets safer. We know we can't do that without physical implementations to make our streets slower. We can't do that because we don't have the money. So why not use the money of the people that are already breaking the rules to fund those projects to fix that behavior?
I like that idea. I just don't know, again, like Nick said, with our police force, I don't know that we have the manpower to enforce that to the point where we can make enough money off of it to use that money.
But we make money now on it. Like, what is the line item in the fees? I don't remember what it is.
I don't know, like $30,000 per year.
Sure. So then we do get more speeders potentially because the speed limit is slower and get annoyed and they go faster. So given our current manpower, we might see that go up. Not that we want it to, but by just playing the odds, probably would. And then we would have money to install more streets.
I guess my first thing would be, I'd look at it as like return on investment. We're going to have to spend $100,000 or $150,000 to start with up front to do the study. How many years?
And then the replacement of the signs.
And all the replacement of the signs, whatever that costs us. then we have to think about how many years of writing tickets does it take to pay that side of it off
Right.
before we can
This
take the
is
money
one of
from those
those
tickets
Life safety
to start,
issue.
right, and I know
This
it's,
is life, though. This is the
Right.
safety of our kids and around school zones. This is all of us as pedestrians and cyclists, so it's, I think that.
I like the brainstorming though. Don't get discouraged by
and can't
by rejection. We got to always keep coming up with ideas and talking it through.
Gary, correct me, but can't we change speed limits on certain streets, or do we have to do speed studies to do any street to change the speed limit? Because I know we have some that have less than 30 on them.
Yeah, that's the threshold.
So when you break the 30, Mark, when you go below 30 miles an hour, then you have to do a speed study?
Yep. You have to do segment studies. That's what makes it so expensive, because you got to study them in logical.
Okay, so if you were to pick out, 6 blocks completely surrounding a school, you'd have to study all of those streets to be able to drop the speed limit on those streets.
Yeah, you're right. If you're trying to do it on multiple streets.
Okay, so you'd end up spending probably the same amount of money as if we were to do the whole city.
But don't forget the speed limit is already reduced on school.
Yeah, and
zones.
school zones are already there by separate statute.
That just to confirm, we have to do it on any street, right? Not just Illinois or county-owned streets,
Right.
even our own streets.
Local jurisdiction, if you want to go below 30, you have to do a speed study.
Okay.
Wow.
There's the arterials, your Kirk Roads, even your 25s, your 31s, your Batavia Avenues. There's the mill views, the redance, the subdivision collectors. So those are all in one category. Let's put them in different buckets, okay? Those are streets that are used by people from all over the city and region. Then there are the subdivision streets that go to nowhere, except to people's homes. And then there are cut-through streets within subdivisions that people use as shortcuts. Those are 3 very generic buckets. The speeding in subdivisions on streets that go to nowhere, they're your neighbors.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the, you want to solve a speeding problem, you got to talk to your neighbors and work it out at that level. That's the best way to solve those speeding problems, because that's not outside people. That's people who are going to house next door to you. Cut-through streets are a different one. Now, I can advocate for street calming, traffic calming on cut-through areas, because cut-through areas can discourage drivers, force them to go around, force them to keep on the main streets, get out of the neighborhoods. Those are logical spots for traffic calming. Those are probably your first ones you want to hit. But the neighborhood streets where you're just going from neighbor to neighbor, those are the ones that I struggle with supporting traffic calming on, because they're your neighbors that are speeding. Solve the problem in your neighborhood. I'm just doing them in orders of priority, because we only have limited funds. First priority, I think, should be any ones that we identify as being cut through neighborhood.
I don't know. I would counter that with, in my neighborhood, those are my kids. Those are my kids in my front yard, and that's where my kids spend the most time, is in the front yard. So if my neighbor's speeding by, heck yeah, I want them to get a ticket. They're the ones driving, they're the most often.
Well, that's an enforcement, though. That's not traffic calming.
Exactly, but I'm saying
that's
dropping
separate.
it there, enforcing it there. Yeah, that's where I want it to be the safest, is in front of our houses where our kids are.
But that's where neighbors need to talk to neighbors and need to work together. Homeowners associations could play a big role in slowing down traffic in the city.
I agree with that, Gary. But just as an aside, in my ward, I've gotten there's been legal consequences because of the neighborly policing of speed between residents that's turned into lawsuits and legal action. It's tough. I do like the program we have with the signs. That seems to have an effect, and the fact that we do it seasonally, not year round. People do notice those signs, and it does seem to have an effect. But
We're going to try
in the
to
neighborhoods.
freshen it up next year. Put a little bit new face on it.
Dan?
I would just bring up again that the targeted enforcement has been very successful. I've had probably in my tenure here, probably 2 or 3 studies, speed studies on some side roads and whatnot. The targeted enforcement did actually help. It did raise awareness, and it was very effective. And it got neighbors to talk to each other. So to Gary's point, it is actually about talking to your neighbors. It's not about writing the ticket to make the money. It's to raise the awareness. Very effective.
Ellen?
Leah, go ahead.
I will just say personally, like, I know the places around town where police officers sit, and I'm very aware to check my speed. Doesn't matter what time of day, if I see them or not, I know those areas, and I always check my speed. So the more and more I know the department's not large enough to have enforcement everywhere, but the more we can make people aware of stop signs and of roads, and that our community cares and that our police department cares and our residents care, I think that will have effect.
And maybe it's something that we need to figure out how we as aldermen could play a part in the slowdown campaign when it comes out in our own wards, to try to find the hot spots and work on some of those and be the neighbors that speak up without getting to the point of causing legal action.
I sit in my driveway and say, slow down.
Yeah. They park my truck out in the street and it makes a nice big thing they have to go around. So that does slow them down on the curve
That's a
out
natural
in front of my
traffic
house.
calmer right there.
Yep. Plus, if they hit it, then I just get a new truck.
Those things don't work on my street.
What?
None of those things work on my street.
I know. Well, we're working on your street. Your street is the one that we've already agreed on that we want to work on to start with. You know, and it kills me every time I see somebody talk about an accident up at Fabian and Batavia Avenue. All I think about every time they put that up there is, no matter what we do up there, we have to force the county to lower the speed limit. I mean, that's got to be something that 14 or 15 of us from here end up at a county board meeting and say, you have to do this. It can't just be realigning it. It can't just be changing sight lines out there. It needs to have the speed dropped. You know, if they drop it 10 miles an hour and then we in the county and Geneva have to start enforcing that for a while to make people slow down, that's what we have to do. I mean, there's just way too many accidents up there to ignore that when it gets redesigned. Okay. We're all done. We're all getting the things off our chest we want to, and we're at the point where I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. Motion by myself, a second by your. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Good night.
Good night.